Alright guys, that last sound I just soloed is the sound we're going to be making today, so all you'll need is Massive and some sort of saturator or distortion plugins. Might be also necessary, but no, I mean not necessary, but you can add them on if you want, but you don't necessarily need it, and that's pretty much it, and just a little bit of EQing and that kind of stuff, and it's very simple sound, so this is a very generic sound. A lot of people use this sound, and it's sort of like I guess it's just a wobble in a way. I mean, I really would describe it as a wobble from a point of like, well, for me, wobbles are something I can throw an LFO on and then oscillate it really quickly, or I mean modulate it, and then it gives me a like a womp sound. So to me, I would describe this as a wobble, even though it's not the typical dubstep thing. It's sort of the electro house wobble, so I'm gonna call this the electro house wobble. And it's very simple to make. I'm sure a lot of people have already figured this one out, but I like to show people my version of this. So let's start off in voicing. So it's very simple setup here. It's just the typical settings you would use for most bass or wobble sounds. So 16 to 1 on monophone, and triggers always, and we're going to turn on the pen position a little bit all the way to the left, so it's a lot wider. Not very typical with bass sounds, but we're going to make this sound wide. And let's see, let's go our oscillation tab. This is where I do things differently because most people just have it off like this. But I like to have this, I like to play around with the oscillation phases. So what this kind of does is every time a new note triggers, each of these oscillators, you can see that this is oscillator 1, oscillator 2, oscillator 3. Each of these oscillators are starting from a different point in the waveform that we're choosing, which is pretty much these. These are all waves, and waves kind of look like these. So this is a basic sine wave, and some of these other waves look really crazy, like, you know, something like some of these waves look like that, especially in the digital and hybrid stuff. Those waves kind of look like these a little bit. So what I'm doing with this is I'm starting each wave from a different spot, and so every time a new note triggers, these kind of all blend together, as opposed to them all starting at the beginning of their waves at the same time, and it blends in, because you know, synthesis is all about blending in oscillators, and oscillators produce waves and whatever. So anyway, now that I kind of talked about that, notice if you guys want to copy this down, you can, and if you don't, that's fine. You can have it off. This sound, I was using it before I turned on the restart via gate, but now that I have it on, I kind of keep it on. Two completely different sounds. It's completely up to you by preference, but I do suggest, whether you do use this or not right now on this sound, I suggest everyone really start using this and playing around with this, because this is like a go-to tool for me when I need to do something to a sound that sounds really good already, but I need more out of it. So this thing just pushes the sound design in Massive, and I appreciate Massive so much more for knowing how to use this, and for them adding this in. This is a really cool feature. I mean, most synthesizers have their own version of this, like Silent. I think it would be yeah, Silent has phase knobs that kind of do this sort of thing. So I mean, but most digital synthesizers don't really have something like this nowadays. That's why Massive and Silent are so good. And okay, now that I've talked a bunch about that, which I always do in all my videos, which is weird. I by now you guys probably already know this, but if you're new to my channel, then I guess you're learning something. And so I have the glide right here, and I'm sure as I was talking about this, you guys have already copied down all the wavetable positions and such for these oscillators, and notice what octaves they were in. So I'm not going to talk about it. I'm just going to point out the waves. So there's a grown wave 3, and this one is just a square saw 1, and just route oscillator 2 all the way up to filter 1, leave this one in between filter 1 and 2, and just bring them both down by 2 octaves, and of course drag in this LFO 5 here and here. And let's see, LFO 5 is just a very basic sine wave. That's the X curve is the X fade curve is all the way up. This is on simple 1 for time. Make sure you have restart on, because it's exactly the same thing that I was just talking about over here with these, that if this is off, every time a new note is triggered, pretty much every time a new MIDI note is triggered, what will happen is that where the note starts, or where the oscillator produces the sound from, will be a different point on the wave. So over time it'll just keep moving and moving, and it'll just play wherever it lands. That's why we turn this on, so that it just starts every time from the same point. Because if I play it off, see, that's kind of shitty. And now with it on, so that's why we do that. But I'm sure for different versions of Massive, sometimes this isn't on, I guess. I've never had a version of Massive that kept this off, but I've seen it on other people's computers, and I thought that was really weird. So make sure you have that on. And of course this too. And let's go to our modulation oscillator. So this is just, I'm pretty sure you guys already got this down. For some of you that already watch my videos, you know my Option or Alt key. So if you're on Mac, Option will let you scroll really quickly through the octaves in these boxes right here. And if you're on PC, I think that's Alt for you. So this was up 2 octaves. And what I did, all I did here was I just turned on the phase for oscillator 1. And I'll zoom in on this so you guys can see kind of where that is. This is very touchy. So if I move this just a hair, I'm going to pull it all the way down. You can hear how different the sound it is. And if I bring it up too much, it's going to sound weird. So this is definitely has to be in the right spot for you to get this sound. If not, you're going to have to just play around with this until you get it. So I'm not sure that sounds exactly the same as before, but let's see, let's preview it. Close enough. I mean, I don't think I changed it too much. Let me. Okay, that's the sound. And this track I'm working on, it's very experimental. I'm not really following any genre rules. I'm just sort of putting things together, so don't mind that. It's not meant to sound like any type of genre. It's just me trying new stuff. So this patch here is very generic for most electro house genres and all that, but I'm using it in a different way, so just don't mind that. And let's move on to our, so now that we got all the oscillators down and I already talked about everything going on here, let's just go to filter 1. So that's just a low pass 4, and just bring everything down, and you're just going to drop in that LFO 5. 3 for if you want macro controls of your cutoff, and bring in a 4, and you guys can copy all that down. So if you don't want the macros, just notice where this knob is here. So this is all the way up, which means that if I turn this off, or if I just hold Option or Alt if you're on PC, you can turn these off. So if I go here, that's where this was when the cutoff was on, when this macro was on, but I'm gonna leave that on because I need my LFO there. And same with the reso, so copy that if you want. And now let's go insert one. So this is just a sine shaper, so it just adds that crunch a little bit. So without it, that's probably what you guys have, and now with it. So I'm sure you guys already have copied that down too. And we're getting very close to the end here, so let's just go to FX1, and this is a Bronner tube, so all the way at the bottom. Drive is right where it is, just brought the dry wet slightly above halfway, and that's really all I did there. So okay, now going on to reverb. Reverb here is just I brought down the the size a little bit and the dry wet a little bit more. And okay, moving on. So if you guys need to pause it to get it, do it. I'm moving on to EQ. All I did was just boosted these up slightly, so just low shelf boosted that and boosted this frequency just a little bit, and that's really it. So you really don't even need to use the EQ if you don't want to. Just kind of have it for just a little bit more crunch. And let's see, everything else I didn't use, so this is kind of what you should have. I'm trying to think if there's anything else special I might have done here. Okay, I can see I don't have an insert 2 routed anywhere because I'm not using it, so don't worry about that. Just make sure your insert 1 goes before filter 1, and that's really it, and that your FX goes through here. So that's really it for this, and any addition to that is just the vinyl distortion. So without it, it's not a big difference, but by adding this in, all I'm doing is just adding more crunchiness. You know, now that I'm listening to it, I kind of prefer it off. Kind of why I like vinyl distortion sometimes is it gives you that dirty sound, that kind of dirty distortion that's really cool sometimes, but sometimes I don't know, it's not always necessary, so I'm just gonna delete that. This is just a typical sidechain compressor, so I just added my sidechain here, routed my kick through here, and just these are my settings for that. So my gain reduction goes down every time the kick is triggered. And let's see, then just my EQ here, so that's probably what you guys have, and this is my EQ. All I'm doing is just cutting the low frequencies beneath 140, just so it doesn't so I still have the bass frequencies of this sound, the very low sounds, but I'm cutting off everything beneath 140 just so it doesn't conflict and blend with my other kicks and bass sounds. And then I'm just doing a big dip right here at 1K, so that's 6 dB, negative 6 dB at 1K. And that's really it. So that's the sound for you, and there's nothing else really going on here on my group. It's just an overall group EQ. You don't need to copy this. The sound will sound the same for you. This is just something I'm doing to blend all these sounds together. And that's really it. So I hope you guys like this. I know my videos have been getting longer and longer because I kind of want to start explaining more things in more detail, but it's hard to find that line between going into detail and just showing you guys a preset to copy. So I'm trying to figure out that line. So thanks guys for watching. Like, subscribe, you know the biz. Thanks.